Well, hello and welcome to this session in our International Women in Business Expo Summit. And I have with me Marnie Perner. And Marnie is a stress consultant and qualified kinesiologist. Marnie is going to talk about calm amidst chaos. Is that what I have had
That's
there?
pretty close.
Take it away, Marnie, in any direction you wish to. And if you feel you'd like to introduce yourself a bit more, go ahead, please.
Okay. No, look, that's fine with me. But just for those who don't know me, I am a natural therapist and stress management consultant. And I've been a practitioner now for over 17 years. So I am going to have a little PowerPoint, but I won't be, that's if I can find it. I won't be, no, I won't have it at all because I can't find it. It's all right. I won't bother. So, what was I going to say? First of all, a lot of people don't know how to say kinesiology. So the first hurdle I get over with people is it's very easy to say. It's easy-ology. So it makes it nice and simple. And even if they don't know what it is, they can then at least say it. They don't have to learn how to spell it unless they need to type the thing into Google terms. All right. So once you know how to spell it, it doesn't seem as strange. And also, too, I think nowadays it's becoming more and more known about. Whereas when I first started, people expected you to have 2 or 3 heads. All right. So I came from a background of a stay-at-home mum. I found kinesiology at a time where my family were requiring assistance that mainstream couldn't help with. So I decided to, someone suggested going to see one. Back then, you couldn't Google it. So you couldn't Google kinesiology or anything. So you're running blind and you go, oh my God, I wonder what this is. So I eventually took my husband to one, sat there being absolutely fascinated by it, and decided to do something that I'd always said I wouldn't, which was study and get a profession. So that was the first shock of life. How it helps by it's goal orientated. So the sessions I run are goal orientated, and people will come up with a goal that doesn't have a negative wording in it. So if someone's got a lot of pain, rather than focus on pain, or focus on what would they like to do if they didn't have the pain. So that becomes their goal. And then using the kinesiology techniques, we find out where they're holding it, what meridian or body system is being impacted, and what are some solutions that can be created. So it kind of is, it's almost like a computer program that you're utilizing through someone's arm. So I generally talk to people's arms, although their mouths talk as well. So I know that sounds bizarre, but it's called muscle monitoring. And with that, we get a muscle that works with integrity. When that muscle works, we can ask questions of the body, and the body will give us direct answers based on the goal that's in play at the time. And one of the things I noticed when I first started my clinic was that although I was just going to work on physical things like muscles that didn't work and body systems and stuff, I soon realized that the main contributing factor of anybody coming to see me was stress. And they would sit there and they'd say, oh, I'm not stressed, I'm coping really well. And you go, but you're in my clinic, so you are presenting with stress. And people didn't seem to understand what stress was doing to them, or what they were experiencing was a result of stress. So it was a matter of educating both them and myself as to how to explain stress to someone who really doesn't comprehend that that's what's having such an impact in their life. Right. So I thought, well, I'll Google it. So I Googled the term stress, and you can't find many medical things, but you can find like structural stress, environmental stress, all those kind of things. And I thought, well, if it's complicated for Google or a dictionary, it's no wonder it's complicated for the clients, because they're presenting with a whole heap of different things which they don't see or feel is actually stress related. So I ended up writing a book about it, because I thought, well, if I don't understand it and they don't understand it, how can I share the knowledge with other people? So I wrote my first book, and it was called Creating Calm Amid Chaos. And I've got that's it there. All right. So it's virtually Stress Management 101, but it helps people to understand what's happening in their life and why it's impacting them. And the big thing to take away from that is stress kills. There is no ill health without exception that does not have stress as its main factor. So, heart attacks, cancer, limitations in movement, anxiety, depression, even emotional stress that people haven't got a physical impediment about. So you had to say, okay, well, stress kills. So how can I make that more noticeable to my clients so that they could understand in very simple layman's terms what stress was doing? So I suddenly thought, well, it'd be great to come up with a set of scales. And if you can imagine that a scale's running down the middle of your body, on one side you've got a stress bucket, on the other side you've got your life energy. And with those two buckets, you've got either harmony or disharmony. Now, as stress builds up, your life energy drops down a bit. Now, your life energy is not some woo-woo-y kind of thing. It's something that sits in your heart region. It's your get up and go. It's your enthusiasm. It's your joy and happiness. It's your immune system. That's where the T4 and T3 cells come from, because your immunity comes from that region of your chest. And all of these things are impacted when your stress gets too high. So I thought, okay, so I've got the bucket analogy. What can I do with this next? So then I thought, I raced down to my parents who lived in a granny flat, and I said, hey, I need to name my stress bucket. And my dad, quick as a blink, said Deliza. And I went, what? Where did Deliza come? It wasn't even a comment or a name we'd ever used. And he said, you know, the hole in the bucket. And I went, oh, Henry. Henry and Deliza. And Sigrid might know this, but Henry and Deliza is an old German folklore. So it was adapted into English, but it was originated in Germany. And it was perfect. I said, that's great, Dad. Henry is my stress bucket. Deliza is my life energy. And it helps people to understand that there's an interplay between the two. You are the connector, but it's also up to you to moderate what's going in. So you need your stress bucket to be as empty as possible in your capacity to cope, and fill up Deliza. Okay. Now, I also suggest to my clients, although I ask them to name their stress bucket, if a Henry in your life causes you stress, do not name your stress bucket Henry. Okay, just be real about this. Come up with something else. I even had clients in the clinic today, and we came up with Jack and Jill, because it's handy to have something that triggers your memory as to why you're using it. It makes no difference who you name your stress bucket or life energy. The difference is knowing to keep your stress bucket as empty as possible. Now, it's also not always possible to stop all stress going out of Henry. And some stress is actually beneficial to us. People who work really well with deadlines and things like that, they use the stress and the energy of an approaching deadline to get across the line. Whereas you'll have another person who deadlines stress them. So they get more and more anxious as the deadline comes through. And I should imagine there'd be a lot of that happening in book marketing and book releasing, lots of times. So remember, what is a stressor to you may not be a stressor to the other person. And that's the same with anything like spiders, snakes, things like that. Some people love them. Some people do not love them. So it is very personal as to what will flip your stress bucket or fill your stress bucket. The thing also to remember is that your stress bucket is a bucket, and it can fill up as easily with little drips as it can with big gushes. So what you need to be able to do is to identify what's going into Henry so that you have got some chance of taking some out again, because you need it to be low enough that if a big stressor comes along, it'll go splosh, or if a little one comes out, it just goes drip. It doesn't go melt down. All right, and that's the chaos. The chaos is when it overwhelms you and you find you can't cope. You're not eating well. You have terrible sleep. You've got brain fog. You respond or react very quickly to situations rather than being able to manage and control what's going on. All right, so a lot of people have said to me, well, why am I the expert? Well, I'm an expert in so much as I've been doing this a long time, and I've seen a lot of things, but I've lived through a lot of things as well. So my lived experiences have enabled me to understand what it does to me as well. So every family has that year, the year that lots of things go wrong. And our year was 2008. So our daughter snapped her anterior cruciate ligament playing school sport. Our son had a car accident, his hand was flown out of the car, and they thought at one stage he'd lose his arm. And then the global financial crisis happened, and the investment company that we were invested in went belly up. So we had a child maybe losing their arm a daughter who's trying to go through her final years of grade 12 with a leg in a brace and a lot of pain, and then no money. So all of the stressors, the big stressors in life, were crashing down on our heads. And I realized that I suddenly had to step up and walk my talk. And instead of just telling clients to cope and giving them strategies to cope, I had to actually use my own strategies to keep me going and keep our family going. So you do it with, sometimes you do it with humor as well. So what I came up with was the concept of, I wrote a poem, and a poem is it was a vibrational poem given to me by the angels. So at night I'd wake up and I'd write a line. So I wrote this poem called What Would You Give for a Piece of String? And where that poem came from is, so remember, we're going back to 2008. It wasn't Google time back then. Google was unusual, and you saw some amazing things. And you might all remember that there was a boy in the States who had a red paperclip, I think it was, and he swapped that paperclip for things. And he eventually swapped it for a house. So it just went around and around, and eventually he swapped it for a house. And I thought, well, if he can swap a red paperclip for a house, I could swap a piece of green string for $1 million, which would have helped our situation at the time. And the green string came because my son, who's a bit of a challenge at times, but is also an extrovert, had gone to a fancy dress party, and it was a fancy dress jungle party or something, and he decided to wear a fig leaf for a 21st birthday party. And we went, right, a fig leaf. How are you going to hold your fig leaf on, mate? Oh, yeah, I've got some string here. And he had this bundle of twine, and it was green twine. And I went, oh, you know, as your parent, you're going, oh, my goodness. Why? Why would you go like that? He did. He went like that. He didn't get arrested or anything, but it became a comment of humour in the family. Is if you're going to have a problem, have some of Jonathan's green string. And that's what I wrote the poem about. Not his green string, but the energy of it. And that all sort of helped me to understand that we need humour sometimes to break the calamities that are going on in our lives as well. It doesn't mean you put your head in the sand. What it means is you have to almost put a stop to the trauma or to the stress that's happening to you, so that you can breathe for a moment and recoup what you're wanting to do or needing to do, enable you to move forward. So hopefully that makes sense to people in that respect. So your stress bucket's overflowing. So how can you empty some of that? Well, you have to know what's going in there in the first place. So knowledge is power. So if you can say, why am I feeling stressed, and step back and let an answer come to you, you'll get little hints, and you'll learn to be selective over those hints and learn how to understand what they might mean. There are certain things you have no control over whatsoever. Investment companies is one of them, but that's another story. But the weather is a prime example of what you have not got control over. Okay, so if you're worrying about the weather, rather than putting all your effort and energy into worrying about the weather, what can you do about it if it's going to impact or affect you doing something? So take brides, for example. Brides spend a lot of time worrying about whether it's going to rain or not. All right, whether they've got a location wedding or a church wedding, it doesn't matter. They still put all this energy into worrying about the weather. Well, how about having a solution or two solutions that you've already thought of, that if it happens, you've got it covered? So, you know, get some bit more marquees, or get umbrellas for your guests. Or my daughter, I know, bought a big box of plastic thongs because they were in a location wedding, and if people's wood shoes got wrecked, that wouldn't have been so nice. So she got all these plastic thongs that people could use. So come up with a solution for the challenge that you're listening to or living with at the moment, so that you can set that aside and go, okay, I am still worried about the weather, but I'm not panicking about it. And you don't go so much into that flight-fight situation. So, you know, Deliza's happening. So what can you do with Deliza? Well, Deliza is anything that gives you joy and happiness. So remember, that's where it comes from. It comes from your heart region, your thymus area. So I get my clients to create a 10-point safety plan, a visual one of 10 things that make them happy or bring them joy and happiness. Now, that sounds quite simple to do until you realize that a lot of the clients I see, their stress is right up here. Their life energy is way down. just to be able to get out of bed at times is a challenge for them. So you need people to be able to do this when they're not quite as stressed, and or talk to them and say to them, well, what gives you happiness? Do you have a cat or a dog? Do they make you smile? Right. Well, your cat or your dog goes on your plan. And they eventually will come up with 10 things that they know gives them happiness or joy. It could be walking in nature or the beach. So which of the two do you prefer? I don't think I've had anyone tell me they want to walk down the middle of a highway or a Brisbane city street in the middle of peak hour on a summer's afternoon. So, that's not happiness and joy. That's stress and anxiety. Okay, so come up with these things. It could be your favourite food. Now, your favourite food is not usually kale chips. It's a very modern thing. What your favourite food is the food that you were given when you were nurtured as a child. So what food did someone, either your grandma or your mum or someone, make for you that when you think of that food, it makes you smile or it makes you feel loved and nurtured? All right, so if you didn't have a mum, you may have had a grandma, or maybe there's just a food that you've always been drawn to when you're not well. And if it's chocolate, that's okay. You limit how much chocolate you have and you thoroughly enjoy it while you're eating it. All right, and if anyone's got children that are listening, think of the different foods that your children would favour when they were unwell. And they generally have a thing. All right, so it's up to you to find out that thing and then put a picture of it on your 10-point plan. And I put, mine is tinned, of all things, tinned tomato soup and Vegemite fingers, because it was something that my mum would get out for me and make for me. I felt nurtured, I felt looked after, and I enjoyed it. I don't have it as much nowadays, but it's a go-to if I'm really down in the dumps. So think about, what is your favourite food? I'll be really awful off my chair if anyone ever comes up with kale chips. I'm not talking just healthy food. All right. So the 10-point plan. So, phone a friend. Is it your doctor? Is it your kinesiologist? Is it just your best friend and you need to catch up for coffee? Is it your parents? It doesn't matter. Again, it's that visual of phone someone. Seek some help. Don't sit there and not be looked after. And I get my clients to put this 10-point plan, say, behind their bathroom door or somewhere that's not out all the time, because they don't always want that reminder. So it's more for if they feel themselves going into a little bit of a spiral, they've got the potential, they'll open the picture or they'll look at it. And honestly, something on that page will draw their eyes in. And that's what they need to start with. Because what this is a safety plan to get you started to bring joy and happiness back on board, because it's shut down for a moment. So we need it to pick up again. And I also share with my clients my top 10 tips. So again, when I was writing my book, I came up with 10 things that I found my clients could do to help them create some calm amidst their chaos. Because look, some people's lives are chaotic, and you need to do it gently and quietly, and you need to do it very methodically, because if you ask them to do too much too quickly, they have a meltdown anyhow, and they can't do it. You tell them to, if there's someone that's recovering from an autoimmune or chronic fatigue or anything like that, getting them to run to the letterbox and back again, you might as well tell them to, fall off a cliff. They just can't do it because their energy is not there for them to enable them to do it. But you could ask them to walk to the letterbox and gently walk back again, or get out of bed and walk to the lounge room and then go back to bed, because it's baby steps. I forget what happened, like when little ones are babies, you give them so much encouragement regardless of when they fall over. And then suddenly, I don't know if it's adulthood or when it is, but all of a sudden it's, oh, you haven't done it. And it's all stress and anxiety because they haven't achieved something. And something that's a really handy little tip for new students or students that are learning new stuff, get them to say, I can't do it yet. So add that little word yet to the conversation. I can't do it is like slamming a door shut. I can't do it yet. It's closing the door gently and allowing opportunity or something to turn up to help, that maybe be the next piece of the puzzle that they needed to help them understand. So language is extremely powerful. And that was one of the things I wrote on my 10 points to de-stress, which I can't find. So my little 10-point charts, you can get this downloaded on the on the downloads on the folder. And they're just very simple things, and they're not rocket science at all. They're all free, so none of them cost you anything. And the very first one is to smile. A smiling lights the soul in another person. It gives them permission to have hope. It's also simple, contagious. You can't hurt anyone with a smile, although I do a disclaimer. I did have a client once ring me and say, Marnie, mate, a man followed me home from the bus. And I went, why? And she said, I kept smiling at him. And I said, well, they're smiling and smiling. Just limit it a little bit, maybe, or be selective at times. But smiling is easy. Like you just use your muscles to smile. And on one of my videos, I just say, if you can't smile, and I have clients who literally cannot smile. Life is so overwhelming and so stressful for them that the thought of smiling kind of downgrades their position. They feel as though it's making light of what they're feeling. I get them to physically stand in front of a mirror and do that. And they have to use their fingers to push their mouth up, because smiling activates, or the act of smiling uses a certain group of muscles. When that group of muscles is used, the neurotransmitters to the brain says release happy hormones. Right? So even if you're not able to smile happily, the act of smiling, that will start to activate happy hormones. And it'll make you feel ridiculous. You'll say, well, this is silly. And that can make you smile. All right? So find a reason to smile. Now, the reason to smile does not have to be anything complicated. It could be as simple as an old photo that you've got of a time when it was a lovely holiday. It could be, patting your cat, or Google kittens and dogs and you'll find something to smile at. All right. So don't use inability to smile as a reason for not. Okay. And another, just an interesting point is it takes more muscles to frown than it does to smile. So you may as well, retain some of your energy and smile rather than frown. Okay. So the next point was breathing. If we're not breathing, we're not releasing, we're not putting the oxygen through the body in the bloodstream and things like that. And also too, when we're sad, when we're anxious, when we're stressed, we tend to protect ourselves. So we pull our shoulders forward and the rib cage comes through and the diaphragm gets compressed. And there's a lot of stuff going on in behind our skin that is going on when we're not feeling overwhelmed. So pulling your shoulders back and then lightly lifting your chin is enough to open the rib cage. It opens the heart chakra. It changes your energy. So if someone else sees you with your shoulders out like this, they're not going to hide from you because you're not looking like this. They're going to, oh my God, what's going on? All right. And just lift your chin up. Another trick I often say is to smell a nice piece of, a nice bottle of peppermint oil or your favorite perfume or a flower, which will help you to take a deeper breath. Because we need the diaphragm to be going up and down. We also need the cerebral spinal fluid, to be pumped up the spine, get to the brain and be dispersed. And if you're not breathing properly, all of those sort of things are not happening. So, again, if you're not breathing or smiling, you're not very well. We spoke about language. You can use language to inflate or deflate your energy. So think about the language you're using. If you're constantly saying, I wished, I want, I need, well, you're coming from a space of victim consciousness. You're not coming from a space of a calmness or harmony. So rephrase, I would like, or it would be nice to have, something like that. It's just a different kind of energy. I've got no idea of my timing, Ingrid, so I need you to nod when I'm getting close. 5 minutes? Lovely. So I'll just quickly say a couple of the others that I've got on my 10 points. It's flip the card over. So try and diffuse the situation by making a different comment. It doesn't mean you like what's happened. What it means is, although, like with our financial calamity, I didn't like being in the middle of it, but gosh, green string was made us all smile, right? So it doesn't always have to link to each other. Do best ever. The human body loves to best ever. So if you're having a migraine of epic proportions, make it the best ever migraine you've ever had. That statement will say to your body, oh, that's crazy, but it doesn't go into a meltdown. You will be about the pain, but the energy of making that statement doesn't pull you down even further. All right, so a lot of these things assist you to start to create calm amid chaos. They assist you to start to get hope that there is help or there's a change occurring. All right. And always seek help. If you're not going to see your doctor, if a doctor can't help, look for other options. There will be other options out there. It's not always the medical field. Again, it's always not always the natural therapy field. So look for people that will help you, or mix with people that uplift and empower you. Find you. I know it's a hip saying, find your tribe, but find people that you like being around. And as you keep doing that and become more social and everything, you'll start to feel better about who you are. It doesn't mean you won't have some days that aren't the best. What it means is you know that there's days that you'll feel a bit better. So if you need some help creating calm amid your chaos, I'm a stress expert. So if you're going to call someone, you may as well call me. And I also have a range of different products that anyone can contact me and talk about. So I hope that's helped a little bit. And thank you for listening.
I think that was absolutely fantastic. I mean, all this calm amid chaos, I can just, go back over this, what you have said here time and time again, because you've put so many snippets, so many very practical tips in here and tools and ways of overcoming and not even getting to the chaos and the stress in the first place. A lot of it is prevention, and I just love it. I think.
Oh, thank you
for sharing that with us and for sharing, your time here as well. And I encourage everyone to watch this over and over to really take on board those tips from you, Marnie. Thank you very much.
That's totally my pleasure. I enjoy it.